This is the next reflection on what we believe about the sacraments, and it's the second one on what we believe about the sacrament of reconciliation. First, we believe we can sin. Well, maybe that's not quite right. It's not what we believe. We know we can sin, and we do. We have free will, and we can use it to choose good or to choose evil. Sometimes our sin is an individual act or the omission of some act that we ought to do as a Christian person. I'm not going to give a long list of examples here. You could make up your own list, that is. Don't make up your own sin. But sometimes our sin is more of a pattern of behavior that is rooted in an attitude or an addiction or an outlook on life or toward people. And that can be more difficult to bring to reconciliation. What is so remarkable about this sacrament is our fundamental belief in the mercy of God. That's the very basis of this sacrament. The scriptures, the Old and the New Testament, are full of examples of God's mercy being poured out on the people of God and on individuals who have been unfaithful to the covenant, that astonishing bond of loving friendship that God established with God's own people, God's beloved people. Jesus is the very embodiment of God's mercy. God who is the merciful and loving Father. It seems Jesus never tires of reminding us of that truth. There's so many stories and so many parables and encounters in the gospel that remind us of God's mercy. The prodigal son, the lost sheep, the paralyzed man, the woman who was brought before Jesus because of her sin. There's so many incidents, all of them emphasizing how much God desires to forgive, not just once, but to forgive us again and again. And that's why we believe that the sacrament of reconciliation is firmly rooted in the ministry of Jesus himself. Remember that great prayer of Jesus, that all may be one, as you, Father, and I are one, that they may be one in us. That's reconciliation. And that's the remarkable truth of this sacrament. It is ours to celebrate. But what about us? When we think about confessing our sins, when we take ourselves to confess, what do we believe about ourselves? You know what I often hear people tell me in confession? Don't worry, I'm not going to divulge any actual confessions. Okay? But people will tell me after they've confessed a particular sin, and sometimes it's not very serious, and sometimes it is, and they are feeling remorse, contrition, which is appropriate, and they say, Father, I'm not like that. I'm not that kind of person. And I say, I believe you. But in that moment, you were. But the good news is, that's not your true self. So to confess our sins is to say that we believe we can be better. It is to say that we believe that the grace of baptism is still possible. It's still lurking in our being. It is to say that we believe we can grow spiritually into the person that God calls us to be. So the sacrament of reconciliation is first an act of faith in God and God's mercy, but it's also an act of faith in our own potential for greater goodness. We believe that. And that's why we speak about making amends, about our desire to make things right between ourselves and God, ourselves and others whom we have wronged, and with our own self that we have let down. We truly believe that we can be good, and that we can be for the good that Jesus shows us. So, my friends, don't be discouraged. Believe in God, because God believes